still seem to be having a little trouble recognizing prepositional phrases and sentences. So below I have the sentences that were on the quiz that I assigned on Thursday. Um, we're going to go through the correct answers and kind of look at a strategy or the thought process that we should be going through as we're looking for prepositional phrases. And then we're going to practice this a little bit more this week. And then if you did not do well and would like to do a retake, you can see me about doing that. But I strongly encourage you to go through, take the time to watch this video 1 or 2 times, take the time to find a passage, practice finding them, show them to me during ICE. I would be happy to go over this with you because we will be moving on to our next grammar unit. So the first thing you should probably do whenever you start thinking about looking for prepositional phrases is think about that formula that we came up with. What does a prepositional phrase look like? We start with a preposition, and we've memorized a list of them. The reason I had you memorize them is so that they would be easy for you to recognize. Obviously, you're not going to have all of those prepositions memorized forever, but the more familiar you are with them, the easier it's going to be for you to identify them in a sentence. Then we look for some possible modifiers. Modifiers are words that can describe describe nouns. We don't have to have modifiers in a prepositional phrase, but most of the time they're there. And then we end with a noun or a pronoun. And the thing that we can remember about prepositional phrases is that they can be taken out of a sentence and the sentence still makes sense. We are absolutely not looking for a verb. If you see a verb in there, it's not a prepositional phrase. Often confused with prepositional phrases are infinitives. Infinitives start with what looks like a preposition, the word to, but when it's followed by a verb, obviously it can't be a preposition anymore. It's got to be an infinitive. So if you see to, you should always stop and think, is it followed by a noun or is it followed by a verb? And then the last thing we've noticed is that sometimes we have a preposition, but it doesn't have a noun after it. It's just used by itself. And if it's used by itself, it's not a preposition anymore either, because it's got to be followed by a noun to be a prepositional phrase. If it's all by itself, then it's being used as an adverb. So in the quiz, I had you look for prepositional phrases. I didn't tell you how many there were, but we have practiced doing this with our story licked in our journals, and we just look for prepositions, and then we look to see if we can find a noun after them. So if we look at the first sentence, last night I had a dream about a strange castle. In looking at the sentence, I want to look first to see, is there a word that looks like a preposition? A word that was on the list of words that we memorized. And I see the word about. So now I want to see, is there a phrase about what? And look to see if there's a noun at the end, about a castle. And if I see a prepositional phrase, I should highlight it. Because what we're left with then is a complete sentence. Last night I had a dream. We just don't know what that dream was about. So prepositional phrases can be added to add description. The next sentence is, I was walking down a long hallway. You can look for a preposition. I see the word down. See if there's a noun at the end. Hallway is a noun. I found another prepositional phrase. On either side were beautiful statues. If you're having trouble finding prepositional phrases, or your prepositions, think about words that it couldn't be. Statues. We never memorized statues on a list, about, above, before, statues. So we could rule that word out. We could rule out beautiful. So that helps us narrow it down just a little bit. And I see the word on over here. On is a preposition. So I'm going to highlight that. On either side. Side is a noun. Suddenly, a little man with a long beard called my name. Okay, again, I'm looking for a word that was on our list that we memorized. I see the word with and without. With a beard. Beard is a noun, so there's my prepositional phrase. He asked me to follow him through the wall. Looking for a preposition. I see the word through. I see wall at the end of it, through the wall. There's a prepositional phrase. Now I see another one here that looks like a preposition. I see the word to. The problem is that I see a verb after it. Follow isn't a noun. I can't say the follow or a follow, but it's an action. It's something I can do. I can follow somebody. So what we've been doing in class is putting brackets around them. To follow is an infinitive. It's to plus a verb. Then the last thing I see in the last sentence, then I walked out. I'm looking for a preposition, and I see the word out, but it doesn't look like a prepositional phrase because there's no noun at the end of it. So that means it must be being used as an adverb. If a preposition is by itself, it's an adverb. Okay. So let's try the next sentence, or the next paragraph. On Friday, I had a scary dream. Look for the preposition on. On Friday is my prepositional phrase because Friday is a noun. Now, if you still need to have your list out in front of you while you're practicing, that's okay. But know that as we go, you're not going to be allowed to use that list anymore in class. A sheepdog was chasing me along a dusty path. Well, I know sheepdog's not a noun or a preposition. I know chasing isn't a preposition. Along sounded like along among. There's my preposition. Along a dusty path. I tripped on a root and almost fell over. Looking for my preposition. I know it's not tripped. I know it's not root. I know it's not fell. I know it's not I. I see the word on. On, over. We studied that one. There's my prepositional phrase. On a root. To make matters worse, lightning was crashing all around me. Well, I know lightning isn't a preposition or crashing. I see the word around. Around, about, above. Around is a preposition. Around me. Me is a pronoun. It takes the place of a noun. Now I see another one in here. I see the word to, and I know that whenever I see the word to, I have to stop and think. Is to followed by a noun, or is to followed by a verb? Make. I can't say the make. Make is a verb, so I must have an infinitive. To make. And I'm going to keep highlighting those in green. I made it to an abandoned barn, slammed the door, and fell over. I see to again. We just had to. You want to look again. Is it followed by a verb or a noun? To an. An is not a verb, so I know it's not an infinitive. Now I got to see, is there a noun anywhere? Barn is a noun. To an abandoned barn is my prepositional phrase. Slammed the door and fell over. I see another preposition over here, over. The problem is there's no noun at the end of it, so if it's all by itself, it must be an adverb. So again, watch this video a couple times, get used to practice identifying them. It might be a good idea maybe for you just to jot down on your paper some of the prepositions that you remember, just so you kind of remember what they look like. Take a passage out of a book, photocopy it, or print something off the internet and look for the prepositional phrases. If you bring it into me, I'll check it with you and we can just make sure that you're on the right track, because again, we are going to be moving on from this and I want to make sure you understand it.